Hello and welcome to the Authority of Love. I'm your host, Greg Williams, and it's my pleasure today to welcome a new acquaintance to me and to the Authority of Love broadcast and podcast, Executive Director, Lane of Roses, Mrs. Rebekah Perryman from right here in Lexington, Kentucky, right?
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me.
Now, we're actually in Nicholasville, where my home office is, but we call it, we're kind of South Lexington nowadays. So anyway.
You claim us.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Rebekah has actually agreed to join us all week, so I know you're going to be blessed. She has a great story and testimony, as does the founding and now the continuing of Lane of Roses, and I know you'll want to stay tuned all week to hear what she has to share. Remember, you can hear us, if you're not listening already, to WJMM 99.1 FM, Central Kentucky Christian Radio. You can also listen on their website, WJMM.com. Click on the podcast tab near the upper right, and then click on the Love and Lordship links. There's 3 of them. That's today's and the previous 2 days' podcast. You can also find many more with Love and Lordship at loveandlordship.com and on our Vimeo page at vimeo.com/Love and Lordship. And that's videos, right? And podcast on loveandlordship.podbean. P-O-D as in dog, B as in boy, E-A-N as in Nancy, podbean.com. So listen, share, and comment. We'd love to engage with you and find out what you're thinking and ask and answer any questions you may have. And with that, I welcome once again Mrs. Rebekah Perryman, Executive Director, Lane of Roses.
Thank you. Yeah.
Rebekah, I heard Katie, you'll talk about Katie some, I'm sure, probably 5 years ago or so in a prayer group that we had over on campus at one point in time. So I know a little bit about this, but I want you to start by sharing about you, your life, family, ministry, faith, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'm originally from a little small town called Mount Sterling. And
Montgomery County.
Yes, Montgomery County. I'm very proud of my roots. I really am. Yes. When I was 7, we moved to a big city. Moved to Louisville. So big, but it was big for me. And I grew up. The rest of my life I spent in Oldham County. Then ended up going to the University of Kentucky. Made my dad real proud. He loves UK. Go Cats. And from there, I just stayed. I fell in love with Lexington, and once I got married, my husband and I prayed for a long time. Really, for a whole year. Is this where we're supposed to stay? Because he was working in Louisville at the time, and he was going back and forth, and I was in Lexington, and just really felt called to this city, and that this was where the kingdom worked for us, for our family was going to be. So we stayed in Lexington, and we love it here. I am a wife, like I said. I've been married.
How long you been married?
7 years.
7 years, and you met at school?
Well, kind of. Okay. Long story. We knew each other at school.
Okay, right.
And he had cancer, and so halfway through his freshman year, he moved away. So this is awful, but I just remembered him as the kid who had cancer. And
God used it.
I used it. And then
right.
he came back, and I met him, and I was like, I told my friend, I was like, he's really cute. I wonder if he has a girlfriend. And he had a girlfriend at the time. So we just remained friends. And then when I started working at Southland, he became a volunteer for me, and I think he was doing it to get to know me better. He no longer had a girlfriend. I should not say that about him. He was a great volunteer. But yes, it led to him pursuing me, and then marriage. So we've been married, 7 years. We have a daughter who's 5, Nora Lee. And she was adopted, a traditional domestic adoption. And then my son Jackson, who is also an adoption, but he was an embryo adoption. So I got to be pregnant with him. So both just wonderful stories I love to share. He's just turned 1, so a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. They're fun, and
You're just getting started.
Yes, I know. I'd like to be one another, but we're both kind of they're really good. Do we want to chance it?
I think every parent has that question.
That moment do we chance it? But as far as
we take this?
Faith, I grew up in church, so I'm very thankful for the foundation my parents allowed. They presented the opportunity really for me to have a very good foundation by growing up in church, growing up in a home that was full of God and His Word and His truths. And disciplines. And so just super thankful for that. But I was baptized when I was 12 because that's what you did. And so that was the problem, right? Is that I was 12 and it was time to get baptized is what I thought. And I do believe I understood that I needed a Savior, but I didn't understand what it meant for Him to be the Lord of my life. And so that came later. And because it came later, I decided to rededicate and rebaptized in my 20s.
Okay, you've got, just in that few minutes, you've touched on a lot of things. One, I didn't know that your husband was a cancer survivor.
Yes,
Praise the Lord. That's wonderful.
Twice.
Twice a cancer survivor. Okay. So that adds another layer that we'll probably talk about at some point regarding faith and ministry and marriage and family. But what I'd like for you to do is go back. You mentioned adoption and then embryo adoption, and you carried. Nora Lee was the daughter, right?
Yes.
And
Jackson
is the son. So you carried him. So what there was there infertility? Did you all work through that? I think I read that on your all.
Yes. So that was a huge part. So when we adopted Nora Lee, we didn't know that we couldn't get pregnant. That was not why we adopted. I'd been discipled right before we got married, and the woman that discipled me had kind of I guess she taught me that, really before you grow your family, you should ask God how he wants you to grow it. And I'd never heard that before. I was like, you just get pregnant, that's just what you do. And she's like, you probably should ask him. And I was like, yeah, I probably should. So that's something when we went into marriage, we just always knew, like, when we felt ready to grow our family, we wanted to seek God and how he wanted us to grow it. And so we prayed, and just really, it's a long story that I really want to tell. But essentially it led to adopting Nora Lee. And so hopefully I can share a little more detail about that later. But then, Jackson, we found out later on, same thing happened. We felt called to grow our family again. So we started praying, felt called to a pregnancy this time. And through that, discovered that my husband cannot have kids, and neither can I. If he was able to have kids, it could have been very dangerous for me, because I have a rare genetic disorder that if I were to get pregnant, it would have been really bad. And I can get pregnant. It's just not as easy for me. So it ended up just being this huge blessing that we had no idea. That God was protecting us.
He was working in all of it, wasn't
so
it?
So in the hurt,
he always does.
There was good. And that was the biggest thing in infertility, I feel like God taught me, is that sometimes his good hurts, but it's what's best. And now that Jackson's here, I'm just like, if this is what I had to do to get him, I would do it over and over again. And same for Nora Lee too. Well,
if you haven't kept up with her, we'll talk about this more as we go along, but she's a great Instagrammer. Is that what you call them?
Yeah, I guess so.
Whatever you call them. I'm a little older, so I don't get that. But anyway, they're great, and we see your kids, and I got to look at that and watch that. See my kids, you can look up there and see mine when they were little, but my youngest, my little girl, just turned 23 in October. So I remember those days very fondly. But man, don't blink, because they'll fly by.
And they are flying by. I'm like,
already, I'm sure. Okay, so I want to focus in on, at this point, you guys have been through a lot. Twice a cancer survivor.
So I did not know my husband during, the first time he was 9, when he was diagnosed, and it's a huge part of his story. And then he was diagnosed again freshman year of college. So I knew him freshman year. Now, obviously, his story, now that we're married, is definitely a part of my life, and his testimony, cancer, unfortunately, it does things, it takes things from people. And so for him, there are side effects that we have to deal with. And of course, the lingering of is it going to come back? That's just a really scary thing, and that's reality. But he got a bone marrow transplant, and it just, it cured him. And that is, God used that to give him, he says his hardest thing is that he's like, how come I got, why did God say I get to be alive? But it doesn't work for everyone, because he did lose a really good friend from cancer while he was going through it when he was little. And so that's something, we talk about a lot, and it's like, well, God needed you here for some reason, he needed, God doesn't need us, but he said, his best was for Patrick to be here. And obviously I'm like, I needed you here. I'm glad
come on.
But it's a huge part of his story, and we love getting to, share that part with our kids, and how God is faithful, and that he is healer. And sometimes healing doesn't look the way we want it to. His healing story is not one that is pretty. It was gruesome, what he had to go through. But he would say, it's made him the man that he is. So he would, obviously.
Which is biblical as well. You count it a joy when you face trials and tribulations, because they build our character is the end goal of that. And it's a Christ-like character. Okay, so I hear this all through your story, your story together. But how did God use all this to strengthen your faith? Because it's what I'm hearing through the whole thing. and then we're going to eventually get into Lane of Roses. So tell a little bit more about the strengthening of your faith.
Gosh, I mean, everything.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot. I feel like with infertility, which I kind of shared, that he taught me a lot about just like how is good. Sometimes it's good hurts, but it's what's best. And really, I think that's what I come back to with every trial we have been through. I think God has used it to really show us his sovereignty and that he is Lord of our life, and he is good. And even though things around us might not be good, doesn't mean that he is not good. Right. And that he is our comfort and he is our peace. And so it's like I shouldn't be seeking the world to give me peace and comfort. Like that only comes from him. And so these trials have made me need him in a way that I pray for, right? Like I pray, Lord, teach me to want you more. All I want is you. And then this stuff happens and so I'm like, hold up. But that it answers those prayers of like, it puts me in a place, it positions him in my life as the Lord of my life. And it reminds me of like who he's made me to be, and because of him, what my inheritance is. Yes. And that I don't live as a victim of this world. I live as a citizen of heaven, and I live in victory. Like that is my inheritance. Yes. And so I can walk in victory because of that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something there, and we got a couple more minutes, and we'll have to close out here. So make just a quick one, and we'll pick up with this. But you mentioned the idea of lordship, and it's one of the huge things of the authority of love and lordship. Is that I say this often. Those two words right there on that banner, love and lordship, are the two probably most commonly used words in today's churches, but they're probably the least understood and maybe even the least lived out, even in our churches. I don't say that to condemn anyone. I say we need to understand that better in order for us to be a witness of what Christ is doing in us and in the world. And so briefly talk about what lordship means for you with all of this, and then we're going to pick this back up.
And I think it really just comes down to kind of what I said. It's like in my faith journey, I was blessed to have several people that discipled me and really taught me to understand who God is. And if you know who God is, you know who you were made to be. And if this relationship is one of receiving his love, loving him first, receiving his love back, then you are able to live a life of purpose, and you're able to live a life where he is the Lord of your life.
Absolutely. That's a great stop, and we can build on that tomorrow, Rebekah. So I appreciate you joining us again. Join us tomorrow as well, listeners. We're going to continue with Rebekah Perryman, her fascinating story and testimony. Invite your family, friends, loved ones, and as you know, I always say, even your enemies, as we all need to hear Jesus' message, and this is a great Jesus message. I love it. I love it. Now, remember, you can get our book. I'll give you more on that later because I'm running out of time. Check out our website, www.loveandlordship.com. If you'd like to donate, I don't do this every show, but if you'd like to donate, you can do there on the website. We have a Give tab in the upper right, and we're going to find out more from Rebekah as we go through this week, how you can connect with them and even give to Lane of Roses as well, because we want to bless others as we do this. So click on the Give tab. It'll lead you through it a minute or two and you're done. You can give one time or ongoing. We appreciate that. Our book is The Authority of Love, the second edition. Please spell out SECOND when you're looking for it on Amazon. If you don't, you'll be on a goose chase. You don't want to do that. So you can look for that there. Love to hear what you think about that. I'm a big boy. I got thick skin, so you can tell me good, bad, or ugly, okay? I appreciate that. Also, what is it here? We have weekly and daily emails as well, so you can find those, and you can also follow us on the Facebook page, Love and Lordship Facebook page. I do a devotional every day, so those are some ways you can connect. I want to thank you for joining us. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. Make it a great day, and God bless in Christ. Now stay tuned for Bill Reeser Encounter. I'm Greg Williams, and you're listening to The Authority of Love.